It feels really good to be chosen. It feels really good to know that you matter, that you're important. But depending on your experiences, especially relationally or maybe in your career, you can sometimes start to doubt your worth. Or maybe you know your worth, but you feel like other people just don't recognize it. You feel like for some reason you're left behind, or you're wondering when it's your turn to get what you want. You can overcome this experience of not feeling chosen or never being chosen. But you can only be chosen when you first choose yourself. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I support you in bridging the gap between who you currently are or see yourself as and who you desire to be or become. Today we're talking about the experience or the desire to be chosen, which is kind of correlated with the desire to matter, to feel important, to feel like you have a purpose in this world. And you know, if we have a desire to feel a certain way or to be a certain way, it's because that potential is already within us. So that's without question. If you want to be chosen, you want to feel worthy, you want to feel like you matter, it's because you already do. It's because you already are. But this belief of not feeling chosen or not being chosen is a very interesting one. And it's one that I have a lot of experience with. It's one that a lot of my clients struggle with. For example, they experience patterns of not being committed to in relationships, of almost getting what they want, but then at the last second, it doesn't work out, or they get partial results. So I definitely see this as a very common pattern that's very familiar for a lot of people. And the thing with patterns is that when they show up in one area of your life, they will also show up in another area of your life, which is why working on your self-concept is the most potent and powerful work that you can do in your life, because you get to break any pattern that you have in any area of your life, in all areas of your life. And I want to give you a very personal example for this. So I have always been somebody who enjoys being in the center of attention. And this is something that I didn't claim for myself for a really long time because I didn't want to be perceived that way. So I wanted to be chosen in pretty much any area of my life. And I didn't feel it. I didn't feel that I was chosen. I was struggling with imposter syndrome. I had a lot of insecurities, self-worth issues, feeling like I wasn't good enough. And back in the day, that manifested primarily in my romantic relationships. I would end up in relationships where I was tossed aside, where I was left for somebody else, where I wasn't chosen, wasn't committed to. And now I can see why that happened, now that I have broken through that pattern. But at the time, it felt like I couldn't get out of this. What I noticed over time, that even after I had healed that pattern in my relationships, the same pattern started showing up in work. Now I didn't feel chosen in work. Now I felt like I wasn't good enough in my work, which is such an interesting but also very frustrating thing to notice. And I would love to hear from you. Leave me a comment below if you notice similar patterns showing up in different areas of your life, because I think this is such a common experience. But what it comes down to is that we all have certain core desires. You may have desires based on different experiences, something that you would tangibly like to have in your life, but really those desires are just a representation of some deeper desires that you have within you, whether that is a desire for freedom, a desire to be loved, a desire to be chosen. And I think the biggest core desires are all connected to who we are and how worthy we are and our place in the world. So that is the desire to be chosen, to be important, to matter. It is the desire to belong, to be accepted by the people around you or by the world at large. So that's basically the flip side of abandonment, right? That's the flip side of rejection. It is also the desire to be seen and heard and loved for who you really are. Not for a fake version of you, not for you wearing a mask. That never feels good. If you've ever tried that, if you've ever tried to be somebody else in a relationship and then you got the relationship, or you were with the person that you wanted to be with, but you still don't feel fully chosen because you are not yourself, you know what I'm talking about, because that's what the desire to be chosen really comes down to, and where it comes from is you want to be chosen because you want to be loved for who you really are and not for some fake version of you. And because these desires run so deep, it is so important for me as a coach and practitioner as well to truly see my clients and listen to my clients and truly hear them as they are and to not project my own stuff onto them. And it's why Recreate Yourself, my coaching program, is high intimacy. I don't like big containers where you're not heard. I have been in those containers. I have been in programs where the coach or teacher would just talk at me or teach at me. It never served me, because what I really need to heal and to transform and to believe is I need to be heard. I need to take up space. And I assume that it's the same for you. If you're watching this, you probably also want to be loved and seen and chosen. The people who have this desire tend to have this desire because they've experienced the opposite. If you have the desire to be chosen, to be important, to matter, you've probably had an experience in your life that told you that you didn't. You've probably had an experience in your life, or multiple, where you were tossed aside or abandoned or rejected and you felt like you weren't chosen. That is what makes those desires rise. It's the negative experience, the experience of the opposite, that makes you realize, hey, that does not feel good. I want that instead. Often when people don't feel chosen, they are taught to put themselves on the pedestal, because if you don't feel chosen, you often put other people on a pedestal and you make them more important than you, which then turns into the self-fulfilling prophecy where you feel even less important and even less chosen, because now you are projecting that importance onto another person too. So that can happen in all kinds of relationships. That can happen in friendship dynamics, that can happen in romantic relationships, that can also happen in professional relationships and dynamics. I don't think putting yourself up on a pedestal is very healthy, because you cannot sustain this. You're not going to be perfect. You're going to get kicked off of that pedestal sooner or later, and then you're actually going to fall a lot harder than if you just kept yourself equal from the start. And if you think about it, have you ever felt the need to be the best or to be the most important person before you learned that not being that did not give you love? At the core, this is just a desire for love. Let's take the example of a relationship. You only really feel jealous of another person in relationship when you think that that other person is going to take love from you. Let's say you're with your partner and you feel like they might be interested in somebody else, or maybe they are or have been with somebody else, or maybe they've even cheated on you. That makes you feel not chosen. That makes you feel not loved, because you think that other person is taking love away from you. So truthfully, the desire to be chosen is really just a desire to be loved, and to be loved for who you are, for your authentic self. When I was a child, I was on a pedestal. I was praised, and I started associating praise with love. And when inevitably I could not keep up that facade because it was never authentic to me, I was just placed on that pedestal and other kids caught up with me, and suddenly I wasn't alone up there anymore. It really created a lot of feelings of I'm not loved, because I associated love with praise, praise with love. I associated being the best or being the most important or being chosen, standing out, being special with love. Why don't we stop doing that? Why don't we start embracing equality? Why don't we allow everyone to win? Now, before we go into how to overcome the experience of never being chosen or not feeling chosen and how to actually be chosen, I want to invite you to check out the links in the description box below. I have linked my free masterclass Magnetic in there, which is all about how to become the most magnetic embodiment of yourself, the most magnetic, confident version of yourself, so that you can become available to everything that you desire in your life. Because truthfully, whatever you are currently craving, whatever you are currently wanting, it all comes down to who you are being and how you are seeing yourself. So go dive into that. It's free. Do it after this video, because for now, let's talk about how to be chosen. So the first step is get clear on why you want to be chosen. I've already been speaking about a little bit about how the desire to be chosen comes down to a core desire. One of the first things that I do with my clients in Recreate Yourself is create a clear vision for their life, for their desires, for their future, because a lot comes to the surface when they really sit with what they want, what they truthfully want. Because often we think we want something, but it's actually just a representation of what we want. And your ego will trick you here, right? Your mind will trick you here. You might find explanations for why you want what you want, because it sounds better, or because you'd rather have a more pristine intention, but you really need to get honest with yourself here. Why do you want to be chosen? Where does this desire come from? What is it going to give you? What feeling do you think you're going to get from it? I can tell you this seems like such a basic step of the process. And in Recreate Yourself, we go a lot deeper into this, and we spent a couple weeks on just getting that clarity in your state and in your triggers and when it comes to your current self-concept and when it comes to where you want to go. So it's going to be a lot more of a deep dive, but this is where you can begin, just asking yourself, why do I even want this? And hopefully this will give you a little bit of clarity already. The second piece is you need to choose yourself. This is why this is in the title of the video. Whatever you're not getting from somebody else, from your external circumstances, from your reality, it's because on some level you're not giving it to yourself. You can't be rejected unless you reject yourself. You can't be abandoned unless you abandon a part of yourself, at least. And you cannot be chosen if you don't choose yourself. So choosing yourself means treating yourself like you want to be treated. It means prioritizing yourself. It means investing in yourself. It means betting on yourself. Notice where you're not doing that and where you can tweak things to begin to change that. The third way how to be chosen is to embody a self-concept of being magnetic, being exceptional, and not being in yearning, not being in longing. A self-concept of already having whatever it is that you want to have. A self-concept of such a deep level of self-trust and self-worth that you know that whatever you want to create in life is inevitable. Now, if you're like, how do I do that? A starting point for that is the free masterclass I've linked below, but really this is what we're doing in Recreate Yourself. The entire program that I teach is such a deep dive into completely radically transforming your self-concept in a way where you come out of the container and you just feel different. You're just a different version of yourself without having to try and make it so. Without having to manage your mind or manage your emotions. You will have just become that version of yourself. And you will be a lot more confident. The fourth way to be chosen, similar to how you want to choose yourself, you also want to validate yourself. Often when we are looking to be chosen by somebody else or something else or a group of people, it's because we're looking for external validation. So have a look at that too. Where are you looking for other people to validate you or your worth? Where are you looking for achievements to validate you or your worth? Where are you looking for a validation? You know what? Validation is awesome. I love external validation. We shouldn't shame that. It's fine to want external validation. It gets problematic when you need it. It gets problematic when you can't validate yourself. And the fifth way is to heal and integrate the fear of rejection, or it might be for you a bit of a different fear, like the fear of abandonment or the fear of failure. One of my clients I'm currently working with, she is currently doing such deep work on this. I'm so proud of her. She's really facing her fear of rejection, and it's such a deep-rooted fear for her. It comes from her childhood. It comes from her past experience. She has a lot of trauma from her childhood. And the more she's working on this, or we're working on this, the more she's healing her fear of rejection, the more she stops to not feel chosen, because her experience of not being chosen isn't actually about the external experience. It's about how she interprets that experience. And it's normal to interpret an experience externally in that way of I'm not chosen, or I'm not important, or I'm not loved, or I don't matter, if that's where your bias is. And it will take a lot of effort to just tell yourself that, yeah, I do matter. Or yeah, I am worthy, or yeah, I am chosen. And it can often feel fake if it's not fully integrated, if it's not fully embodied. Instead of looking at how can I feel more chosen, you actually need to look at the places where you don't. You actually need to look at the fears of it not happening. You need to look at what's preventing you from feeling chosen. So you need to look at the places where you've been rejected, where you've been abandoned, where you've been left behind. And my client is currently healing that so deeply, and it's stopping for her. Like, she's now not constantly feeling like she's not good enough or maybe not deserving. She's not constantly feeling like she doesn't matter or she's not chosen because she's healing the fear of rejection. She's healing the wound of rejection that she's experienced in her past, or that has been created in her past. And maybe that's similar for you. Maybe you have a childhood experience of being rejected or abandoned or having failed or being alone, and that creates that desire to be chosen and that fear of not being chosen, or that current experience of not being chosen. But I also want to emphasize that it doesn't have to come from your childhood. It can also be a more recent experience. It's really anything that's been traumatic in any way, that has left such an imprint on you and your psyche that it just persists in your subconscious. Because when the wound runs so deep, you will take any current rejection or abandonment or any current sense of not being chosen or not being important really personally, because it reminds you, not just mentally, but in your nervous system, in your being, of that experience that was so painful. And the more personally you take this, the more reliant you are on needing to be chosen in order to feel good. And in next week's video, I'm going to share with you the top 10 ways how you can find out whether your self-concept has actually already changed or not. So we're going to clear up some misconceptions about changing your self-concept. If you're done waiting though and you actually want to finally do this work, then you can check out my coaching program, Recreate Yourself, which is linked below. You deserve it. You deserve this transformation. You deserve to be who you want to be. You don't need to hold back and you don't need to settle. And I'll see you in next week's video.